Let's just dive right into this explainer. Welcome back, everyone. We've got a truly fascinating journey ahead of us today. We're going to look at the opening chapter of the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, but not just as some ancient text. By examining our sources, we're going to uncover how it actually offers this profound blueprint for modern ecological balance and even our own spiritual lives. Honestly, whether you're looking at this from a purely scientific angle, an environmental one, or a deeply personal spiritual perspective, the depth of design here is just absolutely incredible. There is so much more beneath the surface of these familiar words. So here's what we're covering today. First, creation order and modern science. Second, humanity's mission as nature's stewards. Third, the spiritual order of the soul. And finally, fellowship reflection and prayer action. All right, starting off with section 1. Creation order and modern science. We're exploring the harmony between the biblical narrative and ecological balance. Notice how God's creation relies entirely on separating the chaotic into a highly orderly, structured environment designed specifically to nurture life. Our sources highlight that the earth was initially formless and void, so the creation process wasn't just, magic. It was a highly deliberate architectural separation. Day 1 separates light from dark. Day 2 separates the waters below from the waters above, which actually creates an atmosphere. Day 3 separates the land from the sea. By creating these boundaries and establishing order, really separating those harsh extremes, a perfectly balanced, temperate nursery is set up before fragile life even enters the picture. It's literally an architectural masterpiece of ecology. God builds the habitat first, ensuring the physical environment is completely stable and life-sustaining before populating it. And you know what's crazy? This brilliance extends to the mathematical perfection of the text itself. In the original Hebrew, Genesis 1:1 consists of exactly 7 words and 28 letters. And our sources point out that 28 is actually a mathematical perfect number. But it gets even more astounding. If you take the numerical value of those 28 Hebrew letters, they add up to exactly 2,701. In mathematics, 2,701 is a perfect triangular number. Specifically, it's the 73rd triangular number made up of 37 times 73. I mean, this level of underlying geometric and mathematical precision strongly hints at the intelligent design behind the universe, woven right into the very first sentence of the text. It reveals a creator who clearly values supreme order, harmony, and exactness. When we compare the text to modern science, we start to see that the precise tilt of the Earth, its specific distance from the sun and the habitable zone, and its transparent atmosphere weren't just random accidents. Our sources note that, unlike Venus or Mars, Earth has a strong magnetic field that prevents deadly solar winds from stripping away our water. And the separation of the atmosphere allows for a perfectly transparent sky. Without that clear sky, created on day 2, we'd never be able to observe the sun, moon, and stars appointed on day 4. Science actually tells us that we are in this incredibly rare position of not only surviving a hostile galaxy, but having the perfect transparent window to observe its majesty. We're perfectly positioned to look up and recognize the handiwork of the Creator. This incredible harmony of faith and science was beautifully captured when the Apollo 8 astronauts read Genesis 1 while orbiting the moon on Christmas Eve back in 1968. Looking back at the fragile, good Earth rising over the desolate, gray lunar surface, they read these ancient words to a modern, scientifically advanced world. That historic broadcast really proved that profound human advancement, scientific exploration, and the ancient truth of creation can totally walk hand in hand. Moving right along to Section 2. Humanity's mission as nature's stewards. Let's look at practicing biblical environmental protection. So Genesis 1:26 says humanity was created in God's image to rule or manage the earth. Now, in ancient times, only kings and emperors were said to bear the image of a god, which supposedly gave them a divine right to conquer. But the biblical text totally democratizes this. Every single person bears the divine image. We are all given this profound responsibility. And listen, ruling does not mean exploitation or plunder. It means acting as God's loving representative on earth. Our dominion is really about respectful stewardship, preserving the delicate ecological balance that was spoken into existence, not selfish destruction for some short-term gain. Consider how this plays out in your own life. Our sources synthesize these concrete actions for Earth stewardship directly from the text. We have to recognize Earth as a shared habitat. I mean, in Genesis, God blesses the animals to be fruitful and multiply before he ever even creates humans. We share in that exact same blessing. Implementing practical actions, things like actively reducing our daily waste, fiercely protecting local animal habitats, refusing to overconsume resources, and respecting plant life as the foundational food web, is exactly how we fulfill our divine mandate. Treating nature with kindness and foresight isn't just some modern political trend. It is literally our original foundational job description as human beings. Now for Section 3, Spiritual Order of the Soul, establishing God's order within us. Our sources draw a really beautiful parallel here. Just as the physical earth was brought from chaos and a formless void into a vibrant, life-sustaining environment, our spiritual journey requires a very similar process. First, we need God to say, "Let there be light," in our own dark, chaotic spaces to reveal the truth. Second, just like the waters above were separated from the waters below, we have to deliberately separate our higher, heavenly desires from our lower, worldly attachments. And third, just as the dry land was brought forth to produce vegetation, we absolutely must allow the Holy Spirit to cultivate the soil of our hearts. That's how we grow, find our purpose, and produce lasting spiritual fruit that bears seeds for the future. All right, wrapping things up with Section 4, Fellowship, Reflection, and Prayer Action. Let's apply Genesis 1 together. I really encourage your group to spend some time with these specific prayer actions. Take a moment to actively commit to being better managers of both the earth and your own souls. We need to pray for the wisdom to see the environment not as just raw material to thoughtlessly exploit, but as a divine masterpiece we're commissioned to protect. And we also need to consistently invite that same creative light into the messy, unstructured parts of our own lives so we can experience true, lasting spiritual order. Group leaders, feel free to pause the explainer right here to discuss this first question. When you see how the separation of the atmosphere perfectly matches planetary science, and how the ancient Hebrew text hides the geometric perfection of the number 2701, how does this incredible harmony impact your daily faith? Science and faith really don't have to be enemies fighting for territory. They can actually be two distinct, powerful lenses looking at the exact same beautiful reality of creation. Moving on to our second discussion point, and this is where the rubber meets the road. Think about tangible environmental actions you can take to honor the Creator's design. As an image bearer, you are an active representative. So ask yourself, does your daily consumption, your waste, and your treatment of nature reflect a loving Creator, or does it kind of reflect short-sighted selfishness? Go ahead and discuss what specific, practical habits you can shift this very week. And finally, for our last reflection point, let's look inward at the spiritual order we just discussed. Which phase of creation are you currently in? I'll leave you with this final provocative thought to discuss with your group. What chaotic, formless part of your life right now is just waiting for God to simply say, "Let there be light"? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Have a wonderful, deep discussion, and I will see you next time.